starting now. So good to see you. Welcome everyone here in the room. Those of you who come from across the UK, good for you to come through this terrible weather this morning. Those of you who are joining us on YouTube live stream, welcome to you across the country and I'm sure across the world as well. So welcome to you all. We will be today celebrating what TWAM has done over the last year. We will also be transacting our legal requirements as part of the charity under the Charities Commission later. But primarily it's about celebrating what TWAM has achieved over the last in 2024. Now it's time to hand over to John, who's going to take us through the first part of today. I think you have control now, John.
Great. I'm going to do a sound check, is that right? Because I had my mute button on just now. I didn't switch your mute button on, just so we...
Are you trying to show me up, are you?
Great. Thank you so much for coming out today. I really appreciate this, and I appreciate everybody that's online. Today is really such a fantastic day. It's a celebration. Unfortunately, in times when technology is available, many people are joining us online, and that's great, because I really appreciate those that have come from far, and I don't know who else has driven far, but I know David's come quite a way, and I know Keith and Brian. Some of the board members are here today, so you're welcome to have a chat and ask any questions to any of those. But really, there's something special about today, and that is that something, you know, it's kind of in a way very difficult to, let's go, point. Aim, switch it on. Did you enjoy that, Trev? Trev's been trying to keep an eye on me the whole time. You know, there's something special. You know, we live in an interesting time where the world is so dynamic, the world is so advanced and so progressive, but yet in so many respects so broken. And all of us, when we go home tonight, are going to watch some news, and it's going to be extremely challenging for us to maintain our faith, to maintain our hope, and to maintain the love that we can give to everybody around us. But if you look at that container ship there for us, there's so many things in those containers going to so many different people, and I just feel it represents Tools with a Mission so well, because we've got something simple that unifies us all, that brings us here today, and that's a mission. And whilst we think about all of those things, we have a beauty, and I've battled to describe it. I don't know if it's a bouquet of flowers that we've got, or if it's a banquet, maybe it's all of those things, but there's like a little bit of magic amongst us here in Tools with a Mission. So I know you can't read that probably, so the chaps were cornering me about my poor layout on my slide, but I really wanted to take us back to a time, and I'm going to have to turn my back on you for a second, where in 1977, Jack Norwood said something, and I just took this from the front of the book. Jack Norwood said, "I sat in my lounge in Southend, watching Tomorrow's World, my feet on a fitted carpet, the boiler burning North Sea gas. I thought of the third world and our situation in England. There is hunger, here plenty. There is energy famine, here gas, electricity, and oil, and we're probably not using it wisely. We have remote-controlled colour television. They have insufficient technology for the simplest farming techniques." And we know this is true. When we go out, we'll see that a subsistence farmer who's earning his living has less tools than I have in my garden shed for my little piece of garden. So my response was to change from being interested to being involved, and from being involved to being committed. So that was Jack Norwood's response. I know everybody in this room, everybody online, and all of our volunteers that can't be with us today have asked themselves that question, what can I do? And have now made the effort to get involved, and made the effort to being committed. And so thank you very much for this year. And that's why it's such a pleasure for you today, just to share the highlights. And it's really difficult to put into 20 minutes what's happened in an entire year of us being generous and giving, and us being blessed. And because today we're going to talk a little bit about what's happened last year, we're going to talk about strategy, we're going to talk about finance, I want to give you assurance today that we're tied to our heritage of who TWAM was in 1977. We're tied to our ethos of who we are as an organization. And whilst you might see slight little nudges along the way, we cherish our heritage at Tools with a Mission. So, 24, 25, it's a real story to tell. There's a lot to do. Yes, we've got wonderful models. We've got wonderful volunteers and we've got wonderful tools. And sometimes we get a little bit tied up in the tools and the parts, and there's no tea, there's no biscuits, all those great things. And we forget sometimes in all of the things that we do, because we're in the Italian kitchen, we're seeing when the van arrives late or the van doesn't come or whatever it is, you know. There's so many things that go wrong each day. We're in the Italian kitchen and we're throwing pots and pans, and this next few minutes is just going to remind you a little bit about why we do what we do. So, and there's something that we can cherish, is that this is from a wall in Tanzania, and that is that we collect moments at TWAMs, not things. So we collect so many things, but actually we collect moments, and that's what brings us together. And there's an increasing ambition that comes with having a good brand, if you were to put that in business terms. People know who Tools with a Mission are. I reached out to a friend who's running a mission in the northeast of Zambia, and he says, no, he doesn't know about us. But I've known him for a very long time. But he says, well, I'll go talk to the tribe leaders. Came back and he said, oh, everybody knows about Tools with a Mission. Never seen a tool, but they all know, and they've given him the thumbs up that this is a good organization. So there's this rising ambition, and this is a new skills center. It's at the back of a church, and there's Rogers, our country leader for Zambia, and that's the church that he goes to. And there's so many hands that put so much work into a container. We've made it all male, just to start a discussion at tea time. But there's so much, you know, but it's just more than the hands, and it's two hearts. When we share these tools it's not necessarily about the tool. And I thought about it for the better part of 6 months, and I had to decide and think about what is the currency of TWAM. So some organizations, their currency will be care, and some will be service. But what is the currency? What does TWAM really offer the world? When we're going out and talking, what we talk about TWAM, we can really talk about that it's a heart mission, because our currency is hope. That is our real impact. Every time a person gets a toolkit and they burst into tears, or they sing out with joy, or they bring the whole fellowship around and they celebrate it where they are. So we can celebrate numerous containers to Zambia, numerous containers to Uganda, which you know about. And one or two quick stories. My name is Samuluti Kalanga, and this is my story. I just wanted to say some of the yeah, I forgot to tell you that point. Some of the chaps have said to me at the refurbishment center, you've got to tell us what's also not going well, John. It's not always good stories, is it? And I said that I will cover that too. But there's a sad story of a young lady. She was beaten by her husband, forced to flee. She was undergoing counseling and training in tailoring. She's now just received the Tools of the Mission tool. And healing is a long process. I've earned enough. I may be able to see my other two children again. So when we go out, we see the realities of the harshness of the environment of poverty and what comes with that. But we also see the tool that gets put on that table that is going to transform a life. Containers to Zimbabwe. Tool sent from TWAM in January 24, bound for Impact Ministries and Ark of Hope School in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. The tools included agricultural tools, Bibles, and sewing equipment. The Tool Center Zimbabwe are so greatly appreciated. Can't put it into words. Many lives will change for the better. May God's grace cover everyone involved in this mission. And then containers to Tanzania. So Ian, you'll see in the photograph there, is a retired dentist. Ian has quietly and patiently, with some frustration, opened up Tanzania again for the first time in many years. It's not that easy to get country leaders, to get country coordinators going, but we're very pleased to say that we've opened up Tanzania, and Ian and I have just come back from a trip there, and those are some of the some of the initiatives we've seen. And what I love about these little initiatives is we put down a sewing machine, and there's 4 or 5 ladies running an enterprise off that sewing machine. In that one on the far right there, the bottom corner there. So Tanzania's open. We were able to find a hub, and we were able to find country leaders, country partners, an ambassador in Tanzania, all in the space of a very short week while we were there. The sad news is it doesn't always go to plan, and I know some of you are aware that the Tanzania container was quite late. But what we had to do was release the country leader we had appointed and find a new one. Now, how did we do that? Great news is we'd formed a coalition, a consortium with 7 other charities like ourselves, both in Holland and England, and one of them was able to say to us, well, why don't you take our project in Tanzania and Mwanza and reopen that? So the container arrived in Mwanza, it was very well handled and distributed amongst everybody else. And a little short while after that, we were able to walk around and see our tools in mechanical centers, tailoring centers, and more. The container to Burundi. So this was Rachel's hard task again. It takes a long time and lots of frustration, but Rachel has managed to break open Burundi, and our first containers arrived in Burundi, on sea into Burundi now, and with good hope that it will arrive shortly. Johnson's in Malawi. Malawi is a sad story. It's an extremely poor country. Malawi, there's a problem in that the primary ag crop was tobacco. That tobacco is unfortunately, crop has dried up because of vaping and all the other things that have come along. So the Zimbabweans are genuinely, the Malawans are genuinely going hungry. And with much joy, our container arrived in January. It arrived at our partners, the Living Way Education site. The toolkits inside have been given to 13 orphanages, 26 women's groups, and 9 primary schools. Our country partner visits, this is the Zambian team, the ever-faithful Zambian team that Paul Seymour put in place and worked so hard at building up. And those are the regional development managers, the country partner, and then the glory of Zambia is Patricia, who's been faithfully distributing containers for 17 years. And it's not easy because people are phoning all the time, when's the container getting here? Give me back my money. and Patricia, just faithfully, in the colourful dress there on the right there, is a real gem for us to cherish and say what hard work she's put in for such a long time in such a difficult circumstance. And she does it so well, and she's got such a great reputation amongst the beneficiaries. We've also paid a visit to Uganda, and that's on the far right. There's the Uganda team. There's Maureen, which most of you know is like one of the pillars in the tools of the mission infrastructure. Maureen's been serving us with faithfully so long, and has come back from retirement to ensure that we continue. The guy with the colourful flowery shirt in the middle there is Sam. He's the new country leader for Uganda, and he's ploughing on for us. He's doing great work. And then the regional development managers and the impact assessors on the left. Of course, many of you know Mindset, and Mindset has that's their team, the catering team, the carpentry team, the tailoring team, and more. Our highlights are definitely meeting Patricia. Like I say, she's a real gem. On the right-hand side, it's meeting the team in Mwanza. Now, Mwanza is an interesting gift for us because in Mwanza, it's not just a sewing training center for senior people that have finished their training elsewhere. Mwanza is a mechanical repair center. So they have a center pretty much like we do. They can repair a whole range of machines. They've been going for quite a long time, a decade and more. And they've been trained up by one of our friends now, Solidarity in Ireland. And Solidarity have just blessed us with them. They also manufacture treadles at that center, and they can manufacture a treadle at a reasonable price and distribute them. And so we're going to be helping them increase the treadle manufacturing. It's going to save us a lot of shipping space, and also on the other side, spread the word about them, because they only earn money when they bless somebody with a course or a training machine or sell a treadle. The whole team out there live very, very leanly. And some of the other highlights, of course, is going off to some of the churches and sing. And I've been to the big churches and all the music and the songs. But there's a little church, and in that photo, you'll see you'll see some of the people. There's about 14 American missionaries, which we accidentally bumped into and formed a great relationship. And we're going to be working with them in other countries that they're also working to again. So you've got to come away from a year and say, John, if you look at all those stories and all those things we're breaking open, what is your favorite organization and favorite charity you come to? Now, these ladies run an organization called, they run an organization which has got over 100 groups. 100 groups of ladies, widows, orphans around the country. And they were blessed by us with a few sewing machines. And Trev and Paul Seymour have been there before, and Trev Maynard's photograph is on the wall. Him and Paul Seymour are famous there. And we walked around their center for a little bit. But the incredibly encouraging thing is what they've been able to achieve. But of course, every time we go to some of those centers and they say, well, what have you done? He said, no, we're making these bags, etc. When I went into Uganda, guess what I saw at the airport? Their bags. So they're selling it across the border into Uganda. What's the next step, they say? Well, the next step is, we've got a contract, but we need industrial sewing machines from you now. It'll take us too long to fulfill. So they have a contract with the government to supply all the uniforms to the Defence Force of the cleaning department. So that's the next big step for them. So that's the little bit of difference that we add, that seed, that one or two little machines we've put down there. Paul Seymour and Trevor followed up on, and they're doing well with them. And now comes the next round of blessing to say, well, what's next for them? And there's industrial sewing machines. And of course, you start thinking, well, what is the limit of the technology we can send out to you? Because, we're not sure. We don't want to send you complex machines and you can't maintain them or use them. But when I was there and I was chatting to some of the young people there, and one bright young guy, he started discussing with me the programming language that they use in the embroidery machine. So these chaps the youngsters are plowing ahead. They understand the technology, they're looking into it, and they're preparing themselves so when the machines arrive, the more complex machines that we may not necessarily want to send, when they arrive, they will know how to manage the machines. So they're planning ahead for these tools to come. So like I say, in this brief chat about the highlights of our year is there's something that binds us together, and it's that magic, it's that knowing, it's that understanding that we are working in unity around one simple mission, is to meet that expectation for those people that want to make a difference for themselves. They want to create a livelihood for themselves. There's so many partners, as Maureen again, there's so much more to share. I'm worried about the time. I don't know how I'm doing on time. One of the big things we've done this year is decided to say, well, why don't we open up England? And of course, we had to wrap that around our minds, share that with volunteers, talk to everybody, and there wasn't too much concern about it. And we've reached out, and I think Trev's last count is that we've reached out to 11 organizations and blessed them, because I did one last night. And we'll be providing tools. And when I came inside, and then the wife wanted to know who I was, and I had to sit down last night and have a long conversation, the first question she asked was, what about England? She works in the prison, so she's seeing the underbelly of society. So of course we've answered that question, and we're saying, well, charity begins at home first, then the outer, and we are serving. We want you to know we are serving local charities and sharing our blessing with those around us when they need them. We've saved lots from landfill, as you know. Many computers and computer partners, still a big part of what we do. Every now and then our volume of computers and knitting machines dips out. So we wanted to say, just sneak this in somewhere today. Knitting machines, computers, we'll receive them anytime. There's been many great events where some of you have celebrated with us. It's a great joy just to break the ice and get out of the workplace. Center stage there was Myron, one of the great volunteers. And there's also so much more. Paul's famous energy was shared, as you can see in the top right. and there's so many of us that share and give every day. There's Lee from rugby, and then also our satellites. And we want to stop today and just celebrate that the satellite centers are doing. And that element is growing. So Trevor's, we'll share a little bit more about that later, but Trevor's been tasked with growing that, and we can say that it's grown exponentially. We've now got to stop and think, what are we going to do with all these satellite centers? Because they're not just collecting, but they're also refurbishing and more. So there's a big discussion that's going to happen around that. We've had to say goodbye to some legends, and I know I asked the question last year, and the guy said, don't bring out one or two people. But I've got to, because these are the people that I worked closely with this year, and I want to celebrate with you their journeys. And on the far right, you've got Paul Seymour. Paul served us for 10 years. Paul, in his own in his own way, sent 100 containers to Zambia. 100 containers in his 10 years with us. What a legacy to celebrate with us. So he's left us in July last year. We said goodbye to James, more about that later. We said goodbye to Jan. Jan served us for 9 years. Jan took us, from one end of the scale right up to a point now where we're so comfortable that we know where every pound goes. Our accounting, our bookkeeping is up to scratch. So we've also had to say goodbye to Paul Daly, who was our volunteer coordinator, and then, of course, another legend, Lynn, is leaving us in July this year. And we wanted to celebrate Lynn today because I don't know who doesn't know Lynn. So Lynn has been, logistics is not a small job in Tools with a Mission. We send more tools than the other 7 charities combined, easily. But Lynn has been the one that's cleaned up, coordinated, sorted, and packed, not packed, you know what I mean, ordered our logistics, ensured that those containers go. And it's the kind of job where there's a big load, but there's also a massive burden. Because the container leaves the back door, it doesn't leave, it goes somewhere. And we all relax. But Lynn then gets, Lynn sees that journey home, and she gives us our regular updates on where's the containers once a month, and how far they're in the ships, are they stuck in customs. There's a lot of stress, and a big part of our budget, about just under £200,000, goes towards this part of what Lynn has been carrying for us. So thank you, Lynn, for your service to us. We're most grateful. Lynn has broken her leg, so she couldn't join us. She's apologized today. And then, of course, new beginnings. Now, many of you'd remember, you would know Caleb in the top left. Caleb, we picked the photograph which we thought with your best hairstyle. So there's Caleb. Caleb's been promoted from an apprentice to the refurbishment supervisor at rugby. So well done for seeing through your apprenticeship, Caleb. We're very, very pleased that you've been able to do that. And I'm sure you're going to go on and do great things. And then on the right, that dapper-looking gentleman is Gary. He's just been on contract with us for some time. And Gary's joined us and made a real difference at the refurbishment centre and able to release Sheldon to better things. And Sheldon is able to release Trevor to a more national operations role, ensuring that the flow of product between all of those centres is going well. Then you've got Tim Lasker has joined us from a teaching background, and Tim's been hard at work for a year, and he's celebrating his first year today. I think it's today, Tim. So well done, Tim. Unfortunately, Tim has to work with me almost every day. Poor fella. But he survived, so well done, Tim. On the bottom, then we've got James, who's made a reappearance. He can't be with us today. He's singing at a thing. And James is taken on a new role now as international country program manager. Now, what is James going to do? James is going to do Lynn's job, and James is going to do something else that we're very good at, going to the back door, and we've been very good at distributing our product and checking up on people, but there's a lot more that we could be doing in Africa, and we realize that we're quite at risk, and there's a lot more governance and oversight. There's nothing that we need to worry about today, but we want to ensure that we're doing our very best job in managing the countries. Our like-minded charities all have somebody in that role. And then on the left, we have Kay. Welcome, Kay. Kay's at the back there. Kay is replacing Jan. So not a small job, and Kay's already grappled with this role and taken us a step forward from where Jan has left us off. And on the far right, we have Jess, who's our volunteer coordinator. So we just want to introduce some of the core team members to you so that if you're coming in and out of the centres, you know who they are. If you see them online in meetings and all of that. Because ultimately, we're still about the people, right? And now there's moments that you want to celebrate, and I don't have all the photographs up there, and saying, well, what's really special that's happened? The first thing is rugby has come of age. And we kind of knew it in a way. It kind of happened quietly in the background. There wasn't a big braai or barbecue, as we would say. There wasn't a big fiesta or celebration. And rugby slowly in the last year, under Garth's good leadership, made its way to a mature facility. It's producing well. It's got 60 volunteers coming through it. Many of us here would have invested in that time and energy, and I'm not sure that Trevor's fully recovered from launching rugby yet, but rugby's really come of age, and I just want to say, you know, I don't know if you'd like to join me in a hand and let's give the rugby fellas a hand. Most of them are going to be online and all that, so well done, rugby guys. And the point we've chosen to celebrate is the 5,000th sewing machine. Has now come out of rugby quite a few months ago already. So isn't that amazing? The 5,000 lives have been changed, communities, families, because we know when we give a sewing machine, it's not one life, it's many. Another thing to celebrate is, and we've chosen the vice, the vice because it celebrates the fact that 25 is a nice round number. It's kind of like we're halfway through this decade, and we can look back and say, well, what's happened in the last 5 years? We're very pleased to say that the strategic objectives that were put in place 5 years ago were mostly achieved. Now, that's a very uncommon thing in the charity sector. We don't always have the resources. We don't always achieve what we want to achieve. But we've grown rugby. We've expanded our footprint. Our vans are driving well. The refurbishment centres are working well. So most things are going to plan, except for the team that had to coach the new team leader. And so I'm really grateful for the team. They've had to endure a lot in the last year. And so 25 is a good year for us to celebrate and say, well done to us for the last 5 years. We've achieved our objectives. The team is still in place. So thank you very much. If you don't mind looking around the room and giving everybody else a hand and saying, well done, and thank you for 2025. Well done. And then Medway, where's Trevor and Hillary sitting? There you go. Trevor and Hillary, many years ago, how many years ago was it? Were quietly told 6.5 years ago by Mike is if you want a centre, go and build it yourself, which they did. And Medway have really come along nicely. Medway have come to a point now this year where I was invited to the board meeting, and Trevor and Hillary and their team looked at me and said, John, I want you to be aware of the fact that last year we sent 500 sewing machines. And that they funded themselves in Medway, they've serviced themselves, they bought their own hardware, they play their own building, they've raised their own volunteers, and it's wonderful to see Medway coming of age. So really, from our side at TWAM, one of the most humbling things that we've experienced. And thank you so much to Trevor and Hillary for all that you've put into that Medway Centre for 6.5 years. You've served us graciously and generously. Thank you so much. And this month, Medway are now entering into a larger facility. They're also growing and expanding, and it's going to be wonderful for us to serve you in every way that we possibly can to see you grow. So, the volunteers, I'm probably over time, Keith. So there's too many volunteers. Go back. It's more, Roger says, I do the work because it helps people and it's addressing climate change and it's fun. And Tim and Alison, it's more than just tasks and numbers. it's about the individual triumphs. It's about every kit we pack, it's every kit we collect, every van we drive, every time we raise funds. It's about everything, and it's very difficult to describe. It's simple, but it's profound and it's highly impactful. So thank you very much for 2025.
Thank you, John. We're about to go to refreshments, but I'm just going to very impromptu add one of my reflections on this as well. What John said, I had the privilege of going to Zambia in 2018 with Trevor and Hillary and a few others as well. And it was just amazing. At the end of the trip, we sat down just before we left the hotel to go to the airport, and Mike asked us what was our reflection. And I said, it's there to there. I knew that TWAM did well. I knew that TWAM did good. I knew that when we saw sewing machines and kits, it did good. But when I went to Zambia, it went there. I saw what it did. I saw the effect it had. I saw the way that it helped people. And that was just motivating to come back and do it again, even more. So yes, it was, we do a great job in TWAM, and it's really good to see what we've done. Thank you, John, for what you've done for this year and for giving us that presentation. So, without any further ado, it's time for refreshments. Outside again. What was that? We thought we'd give you a flavour of Africa as we depart into refreshments. So when I click the clicker and dismiss you to go and get your tea and coffee, a video is going to come up of a choir singing in a church in Zambia. Watch it or listen to it. It's good. It's about 10 minutes long, so it will go on for some while. So as you're filing out, you'll hear the choir singing. And if you wait long enough, you might actually see our chief executive somewhere in there, not singing, but sitting on a chair listening. So, so we've got 20 minutes for refreshments. Was been cut down a bit. So let's say if we could try and be back in here by 25 to, so that's 15 minutes. I'll come and corral you all back in. So thank you very much indeed. We're back in 15 minutes. Thank you. the people who went with me to Zambia. And one of my memories, apart from all the TWAM stuff, was the church service we went to, they had a choir singing there, and they sang, if you know the Messiah, Handel's Messiah, they sang the Worthy is the Lamb, the Amen chorus. How big is the choir? It's about 100-strong choir, a cappella with no music. It was just, I mean, even now, it's giving me tingles down my spine. It was just an awesome experience to sit with that choir just singing what is a very complex piece of music, absolutely brilliantly. So yeah, I love hearing African choir singing. Next bit is moving forward. We've talked about what TWAM has achieved, and now the next bit is the strategic plan. John mentioned that in 2019, the board met over, why is this echoing? The board met a number of times and put together a strategic plan for 2020 to 2025, of which most of, as John said, has been achieved. Of course, at that point, when we put it together and launched it beginning of 2020, we didn't know a certain thing called COVID was going to hit, which put us a little bit off track, but to achieve what we've done with COVID in the middle of it has been amazing. God's been really good in helping us. But now with John here, we said, right, we need to reset and do another 5-year plan. And so John's been working with the board to put together his vision and our vision for the next 5 years, and he's going to now come and share that with us. John.
So I learned an interesting thing now. You switch the mic off when you go for tea and have chats with everybody. So my sincere apologies to the folks online for hearing all my tea time conversations. So we learned. Well, the good news is I didn't go to the loo, so it should be fine. We're just going to backtrack quickly a little bit because there was a slide that didn't work that sort of threw me off a little bit earlier. Sorry? Can't you? He's going to find it for me, all right. Yeah. There you go. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Maureen. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good afternoon, Simon.
It is lovely to see you. It is a long time since I have been with you in Mindset.
Lovely to see you too, and thanks for the good job you are doing with TWAM.
It is our pleasure to help you. Would you like to introduce the gentleman sitting to your side?
He's Pastor Vincent Kabonge. He runs a carpentry workshop near the lake in the suburbs of Entebbe, a bit of a distance from us. I identified him doing a good job. So, you know, at Mindset, we do tailoring, knitting, and cookery. And nobody has ever questioned why I ask for carpentry equipment, but we give it to him because he helps youth from the island who are school dropout, and I draw. So he has given them a chance of another life.
This is great, Maureen. So this is Mindset working in partnership with somebody else.
Yes. I would like him to show you some of the equipment he got from TWAM, which has been of great help to his workshop.
I think they have received a workshop kit, haven't they?
Many. All the carpentry kits we get goes to him. So he would like to show you some.
There's a bandsaw and a table saw. What is that, Vincent, please?
This is a planer thicknesser.
A planer thicknesser. And the next one?
This one's cutter.
A cutter.
This one planer surface.
A surface planer. Vincent, how many students do you have in your workshop?
Right now I have 20.
And what sort of items are they making?
We make many things: beds, doors, dining,
chairs,
coffee, tables, everything.
Very good. And how long did the students spend with you?
2 years.
2 years.
2 years. Very proficient when they finish their time with you.
Yes, yes, they are professionals.
They are professional. Even some have their own workshops now.
Do you sell the items that you make to help with the community, or do you sell them to help with buying more materials? What do you do?
We have showroom, we sell furniture. When we sell, I get food for feeding the students. Even now, we get some money, we rear chicken, pigs, whatever.
Also provide for household income and food, some of them back, the young ones, the school, yeah.
Providing for the students, for their families, to help them again, as we've always talked about with TWAM, helping people come out of poverty and get schooling and get better opportunities. Oh, Vincent, thank you for coming and showing us your tools. We are pleased to be able to help you, and we thank you for all the work you do in training young people with new skills.
Okay, sir.
Most welcome. They're most welcome.
Also, we thank you for the help you give us.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. Goodbye, Vincent.
And there's more on that. Thank you very much. There's more on that. Will be shown at lunchtime. But it does, in one short video, describe who we are and what our essence is. What our gift to the world is giving a tool that we know that's going to enable the enablers. So the pastor there has got that tools from us, and he's enabling the enablers, and that tool it's a gift that keeps on giving. So he's training approximately 20 people a year, and that's not an uncommon story. That was the most common story that I found in Zambia, Uganda, and Tanzania. If you look at the strategic plan, it's an interesting time to come in as, you know, as a new fellow and say, well, John, tell us what your vision is. And that's quite humbling, because I want to ask you a question now. So who's volunteered or worked with us for a year or less? If you don't mind putting your hand up over there. There we go. There's a few more that are not. Kay and Jess, I think you've been with us for less than a year. Hiding away doesn't work. And Tim has just come up on a year. Who's been with us for 2 years? Just put up a hand. Who's been with us for 5 years? Who's been, and that's associated in donating as a donor, supporter, funder. Who's been with us for 5 years? Many of you have been with us for 5 years. Who's been here for 10 years? Or more? And Maureen, you know, you start entering in Maureen's territory. Who's been with us for 20 years? 20 years and longer? There we go at the back. And who's been with us for 30 years and longer? Wow. Where is Bill and Beryl? How long have you been here, Bill and Beryl? So, from the beginning, right? Yeah. So Bill and Beryl, you know, when you look at me and you're going to say, well, tell us, young man, what is your vision? And I'm like, oh, well, thank you for saying young man. Not that Bill and Beryl said that to me, but just in general, you know. And so what is your vision? And the question that we've really got to ask ourselves is a little bit more than that. We've got to say, well, you know, what is next and where to? But we've also got to say, well, who are we and where are we coming from? You know, those are two big questions, what is next and where to? And so we've answered that, but we've answered in an interesting manner where we've had a lot of conversations. We've gone around, spoken to some donors, supporters, friends, volunteers. Like we said, we formed a consortium with the other charities like us. And I'm going to have to turn around again. The power of feedback from and we looked at all the elements, the vans, the country coordinators, the tool collectors, the volunteers, the receiving donors, grants, boards, staff, refurbishment, and countries. And we've done a deep dive, poor staff members, done a deep dive into all of those areas and critically looked at everything that we're doing that's going well and not going well in a conversational way, in a storytelling way. And there's some numbers you have to look at when you're looking at an assessment. You're saying, well, where are we going in 25? And that volunteer curve shows you something that's happening with our volunteers. We're very good at people joining us, and we're very good at people staying with us for a very long time. The number of shipments have increased quite dramatically. And the consequences of who we are is that we're well, I'm going to turn around, sorry about my back. The consequences of who we are, TWAM is a well-established, a wonderful community, a loyal donor base that is growing, is the largest exporter of used tools from the UK by far, is well governed overall by a very, often not seen board members that put in a lot of hard work and direction in the background. He's well funded for his current process and purpose, has 2 well-kitted and established refurbishment centers and many, many satellite centers that keeps growing, has a mature supply and logistics chain, is established in Zambia and Uganda, and the other countries it's a mix of good times and bad times, works in multiple countries, has a good media presence, has a good functioning website, has systems, impact assessments, and apply. So if you were to ask an outsider coming in saying, this is a well-grounded organization, it's very well-grounded, very well-founded, and there's so many things that we do right. But then you've got to start saying, well, what next? We're so good at what we do. We're so faithful in the little that we get and the much that we give, that there's more to our future. And so we had a look and we had an interesting conversation around, well, what about 100 years' time? What are people going to leave? Because when you plant a church, you plant it for the 100-year vision, right? When you start a business, if you were Coca-Cola or Power Construction in South Africa, had a 100-year vision. And Coca-Cola's vision was very simple. Is if you put your hand out anywhere in the world, you will be able to pick, in 100 years' time, a Coca-Cola up anywhere in the world. Now, who knows that that's true for 50 years or more? So they've achieved, I don't know how long early they achieved that, but anywhere in the world you can pick up a tool. So what are we saying about where we are? We're saying, well, what legacy are we going to leave for the generations that come? Is that we want to contribute in a world of abundance, in a world of turmoil, but a world of abundance where we create more food than we can eat as a world. It's true. Where we produce more goods than we can consume. It's true. And everyone could have a tool. There's no reason why everybody could not have a tool to create a livelihood for themselves in the world. So TWAM wants to find itself on that journey towards that, where everyone will have tools available to them when they want to create a livelihood for themselves. And we want to join in others that have a similar vision to that. And that's the legacy that we want to, that's the dream that we want to leave behind for everybody, that everybody can have a tool. If you say to us, where are we in 10 years' time, we want to shift something slightly. There's a little shift, but it's a big shift. It's just moving the dot slightly. We want to say that we're going to go from being an organization to a movement. And people said, what do you mean by that, John? Well, it's very simple. A movement is the Men's Sheds movement. Who of you familiar with the Men's Sheds movement? Now, there's something interesting about the Men's Sheds, is that you can put up a men's shed anywhere you want at any time. You can do a Trevor and a Hillary. They might advise against it. But you can put up a men's shed anywhere, anytime you want. So the reality is that you then can form an association with them and you can work with themselves. We have outgrown our current model, and that's really harsh for me to say as a new, I've only been here a year, but we've outgrown ourselves. We've outgrown the Ipswich Centre. We've outgrown rugby, believe that or not, in 3 years. Garth, you got more space for more tools tomorrow? He's going to say, well, where? The loo? So we've already outgrown rugby after a few short years, but we can associate with organizations like the Midway and say, can you develop tools for us? Can you distribute tools for us? Can we put warehouses down all around? So we're hoping in the next 5 years to clarify that, not changing anything in our current format, what they would mean in the 5 years thereafter to make us more of a movement, more networked, more partnered. We're not changing our purpose. We're still a Christian charity that sends tools across the world. We're changing our mission statement slightly, and this is a big thing to change. We're deleting that element that says, and we send them to the developing world. More and more, we're getting asked the question, what about our home? What about in England? And sometimes they ask us rather nastily, and Tim has to clean up the Facebook page very quickly. But we're saying we're a Christian charity that collects usable, donated tools and refurbish them and sorts them into kits for livelihood creation. That mission statement means that we're open. And last year we did that. We sent tools to Romania. They came and collected the tools from us. Didn't cost us anything. There's an abundance of tools. We go through these seasons. We have an abundance of tools. We could share them with them. We can get the report back. The tools were distributed. They were well received. And like I said, there's another 11 charities in the UK, and we've just scratched the ice. Now we're going to be appointing a country coordinator for the UK. We looked at our tagline. It was, we empower people. So some people have confused the tagline with the purpose and all that, I know. But the tagline is like our little marketing thing, a little marketing soundbite we put out. And we've had to think about the world of sustainability. What's attractive to the world at the moment? And people want to give towards sustainability. They don't want to give anymore just to relief or to aid, but to a development organization like ourselves, they want to give. And we're that organization. We give communities in need the tools to fund a future for themselves. What that allows us to do is to also think about what those tools might be in time to come. The board had to make a strong decision, and this is a strong decision. It's going to require risk. It's going to require something to think about, and I'm borrowing from Clem Sunter, a strategist, to say that, you know, we choose a high road or a low road, John. The low road for us is that TWAM maintains its marginal investment in the future using cost control as a primary driver. As a result, we reduce collection points, collection tonnage, reduce refurbishment activities and refurbishment capacity, reducing kits and containers. We maintain a lean structure to ensure minimal liability and risk. That was the low road for us. So what we're saying is, let's stop collecting, let's slow down the vans, because we'd outgrown. And the board asked me a point, what is the trigger point, John? When did we do this? And I said, the day you opened the rugby centre, you outgrew what we'd built at that point. And that's why rugby, there was a lot of stop and starting, some stresses and tensions, but now rugby's got onto the right track and it's producing well on that. So what's the high road? The high road is what the board have directed to me when I joined, is to say, we need to strengthen this organization and we need to grow it and we need to prepare it for the future. So the high road is TWAM invests in developing the organization to enable the growth and develops the organization to ensure sustainability of it, of our impact, our partner organizations and the livelihoods we create together. Our primary drivers become invested growth through stewardship. So we maintain this ability because Jan has handed well over to Kay, that we know where every pound is that comes to us. Sometimes we make mistakes, but we know where pounds are come to us. And generally, we're an incredibly lean organization by comparison to our peers. And generally, we're doing more, we do more than what we get. So we're going to maintain that stewardship, but the high road is we're going to have to invest. So we've done that, and we want to do that without forgetting this fact that we're an English-based charity, England and Wales-based charity, but that is our heritage, but we need to be building our bridge to Africa more. So other development organizations have somebody in the country, or they have somebody primarily responsible for the country, and we have country coordinators and volunteers, but we don't know enough about what's going on in Africa, what the needs are, what the challenges are, how to improve shipping, logistics, etc. And so we need to, that's a big investment for us now, is to swing into Africa and go, well, let's walk with those organizations. So we could give an organization a tool. They apply the tool, they set up a sewing department. After a few years, they got 10 carpentry machines in it, and now they're training 20 students a year. But what they've come back to us and said, because now we're listening, we're not just England pushing what England wants to push, but we're also listening, so we become a needs-based and evidence-based development organization by saying, what are your needs? And they're coming back and saying, please won't you help us run the organization? Please won't you help us train our trainers? And that's going to be a big shift for us going forward, is that we're going to be helping them indirectly through our networks and through our partners to help grow those organizations. When you look at, just now, we'll talk about the fact that we worked with 500 organizations in Africa last year. That's an incredible amount. Us few folks have worked with 500 charities throughout the UK. Incredible results. But isn't 500 maybe too much? Maybe we don't know at the ends of that. Are those tools being well applied? Are they still in the training centers? And is there a certain degree? And Dave, our board members at the back, has been talking to me for a couple of months and saying, John, about these impact assessments, we can't reach everybody. About these impact assessments, we can't necessarily see the results. So that's a big strategic shift for us, is to get more invested, involved in that, and to drop the 500 organizations, counterintuitive, to 100 organizations in the next 5 years. Why are we wanting to do that? Because we're going to work with a primary hub in an African country that serves many more, can serve the 10 smaller organizations around them. That primary hub, if we invest in the trainers and we invest in the resources and the management of that, they will naturally, quickly be able to help the 10 around them. So we're going to be able to do a much better job with a similar set of resources, and we'll show you a marginal investment later. Forget the detail around the slides, but we've looked at the strategic objectives from both local impact and developing countries. You can read for yourself, there's some of the shifts that are going to come. I can highlight for you an engagement of veteran organizations and disabled organizations. And then in the developing countries, we're going to continue to support those 2,000 causes, like I say, but through a maximum of 10 organizations per country. We're going to choose the primary ones that we can work more extensively with. If you look further at the enabling objectives, and then we can start looking at, well, it's a bit of a balanced scorecard for those of you that come from a business background, the financial, our customers, which are recipients, the operations, the sustainability. What is going to enable us to do that is that in 5 years' time, we want to raise £2.3 million, which is a significant step up from where we are. And what have we done to date? We've started preparing. Not quick enough for David Moat. Where's David? There he is over there. Dave's come from a business background. He's like, John, come on, the clock's ticking. Not quick enough, but we've prepared a fundraising team now. We're raising fundraising volunteers, and we're going to move towards, in a 5-year time, start stretching ourselves to say, Lord, we can have faith in more in you. And the reason for that is that if you're going to work more extensively with those organizations, it's going to cost more per toolkit to send, slightly a little bit more per toolkit to send, but the intention is that we'd be able to deliver the results a bit better than that we can. So the fundraising team, we're starting in a month's time with a fundraising volunteer. We've got a few fundraising volunteers. David and Paul White have been doing a fantastic job for a number of years, but we've started now with a fundraising apprentice. We're going to be raising funds for that shortly, and looking at expanding that fundraising team. And if you say, John, that seems overly ambitious, the intention is simply this, is to look around you and saying which organizations are like us. So you can look at Mission Aviation Fellowship and that. We are modeling ourselves and we're looking at what is possible with them. Our recipients, we want our recipients to receive the tools within 1 year of applying and 100% fulfillment. That's a stretch target, because ultimately you understand tools can spend 5 months at sea before they arrive. In operations, we want to achieve 50 hubs. I think Trevor's getting close to that already. So he's had to say, John, I've got to start switching this tap off. There's just so many mentions coming on board now. That we can't do that. So if you look at the resourcing, so we've said that we've gone from 6 staff which are directly involved in resourcing, and 6 staff. Our goal will be in 5 years' time. We've gone from fewer staff to more staff. I think if you had to put the slide up a few years ago, it would only be Trevor on that slide on the refurbishment side as a full-time employee, and that's grown. We hope to go that to 6 full-time staff in the refurbishment side and 6 full-time staff in the support staff. The collection point, we feel we're going to keep at 5 vans. The big question is, are we going to add a 6th van at the moment and not? We have to grow the other elements of our business. We can't take on more tools. And we're going to look in the refurbishment of having 200 volunteers up from the 126, 200 collectors up from 160, and then 200 plus volunteers in support staff as that becomes more and more important. And those are roles like business analysis, fundraising, volunteer administration. There's many roles that can match both parts there. So not to bore you with the graph, but we've had a deep dive in looking at the statistics, the financials, and more, and we're saying, what do we have to do? And there's a genuine intent for us to having to increase our income over a period of time, and so the darker color there represents where we're hoping to go. in 2025 and 2026. I'm going to be out of time, so I'm going to skip the key projects. I just want to say from a key project point of view, it's important to note our move in Africa to hubs and our move in the UK to hubs. So if you're thinking about an organization, we might have a slightly small hub that we might not pay too much attention to, but when you go to Frinton, down the road from us here, and you go and walk amongst the volunteers there, and you see the people there, you realize that there's a nice little hub going there. They're receiving tools. The volunteers are working hard. They're bringing the tools back to us. And what we're wanting to do is work with those hubs and say, how can we grow them? And that hub can then serve other satellite centers and that, because we are moving too many tools up and down the country. So yeah, key drivers are looking at the countries, looking at our sustainability as an organization, getting certification to open up a whole new avenue of funding on sustainability. If we have corporate certification that says, you know, our eco-credentials are on our walls and that. Reducing lead times, which is going to lead to a lot of other things, and 100% fulfillment, which really means we're going to be doing exactly what we say. And I can give you assurance that when I redid this assessment, I tested with Trev just the other day again, say, Trev, how are we doing? We're at 97% fulfillment, which is kind of interesting because you're a volunteer organization. You can't say what's going to come through the door, but people ask something there and they get it 97% time without an alternative, which is better than the Morrison's order that we did for the food today, last night. So our key focus is you can see my age because I keep looking there because I didn't realize the camera's there. So increase our income to £1 million in 2026. That's going to be the key enabler for us to get there. So where we're at today, we're on target for a £700,000 income, but we need to increase that income to about £1 million to continue to grow and to catch up from our fundraising efforts now. You're saying, John, you're being over-ambitious. That goal was our goal for 2023. We were going to get that number. So we've fallen a little bit behind on the fundraising, and that's why we're putting a fundraising team in place and putting a lot of effort into fundraising and growing our very successful donor base. So we're going to be adding to the fundraising base the corporate partnerships, which we've always done, but lightly. And so there's more of us that are starting to look at corporate partnerships and look at ways in which we can partner with them. The ultimate goal being where we get to a point where corporates give us 1% of the net profit after tax. So those are the kind of corporate partners we're aiming for. For in-country partners, we've already been talking to businesses in Uganda and Zambia, banks, mining groups, etc. So we are starting to look around and say, well, who are partners locally that have to have corporate funding? The tool sales, it's a sticky one. Why do you sell tools that are given? Just to remind us all, we can't send all the tools. Some of the tools aren't suitable, and some of the tools are high value, and if you're going to be put on a bench under a tree, it wouldn't be worth it. So we don't send iron crosses, Paul, is that right? And we don't send certain valuable family Bibles, and Paul does an amazing thing about restoring all of those to the families, and we get interesting things that just get thrown out with Grandpa's shed, and the chaps do a very good job of digging out that and raising funds for that, but we really need to expand it a little bit further now and putting up a centre at each site, a sales centre at each site. So, of course, there's loads of room in Ipswich and Rugby for do that. And so it's requiring thinking and it requires special funding. But we're going to have a sales on site in each centre as we want to raise our that. So last year we did 19.3% and this year 25% on sales, fundraising. Okay, so we've covered key risks. So that's, in a nutshell, I think, trying to sum up in a few short minutes what the direction is. If I can sum it up, networked, partnered, journeying together with others, and growing and investing in our new future growth. Because we can't look at ourselves and go, Lord, we're going to put our talent in the ground. We've chosen to say, Lord, we're going to invest our talents and we're going to grow the organization to meet demand. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Get up there. So, Yeah, so John's worked very closely with the board in defining the strategy, and over a few months we've worked together, and we fully support what he's trying to do, and we signed off on that a few months ago. So is there any questions specifically for John or or for me on the strategy? There's a lot of information there, I understand. But yeah, any questions? And if you have a question, I'll bring the microphone to you. Do we have any other roving mic, Trevor, apart from this one?
Thank you. John, I think the strategic plan is good, and it sets out exactly, a vision of where we're going, and it's something I can certainly get on board with. I suppose for me, the devil is in the detail, isn't it? It's what sits below that in order to drive that plan forward. And I'm just curious as to whether you think we make best use of the resource that we've got in respect of the volunteers. Because there's a lot of people that I've met, and I've not been volunteering that long, that have come from a background that would allow them to assist in the delivery of that strategic plan. I go along and sharpen builders' chisels. Yeah, that's not my background. I'm not a professional and was not a professional chisel sharpener. And I know, having spoken to other volunteers, they come from a background in their professional life that would allow them to assist in the processes that are to develop the processes that are going to assist in the delivery of the strategic plan. And I'm just not sure, I haven't seen any evidence yet in my short time, and indeed your time's even shorter here, of us making best use of that hidden resource that is there.
Jess, do you want to answer that? You started this week. You should. Just kidding. No, we don't. And why? Are you being critical of the past? No, I'm not being critical. I think everybody's done a fantastic job at getting us this far. But we've suffered something in the last 5 years, and we're victims. And people have taught me this term in the UK. We're victims of our own success. So we've grown too fast in the last 5 years in so many respects. We've doubled the amount of volunteers. We've doubled the amount of containers. We've doubled everything that we have. And in that time, we haven't discovered that. So I've met some really interesting people. And said, what is your background? I'm in technology. What are you doing now? So I think we're going to put in a new effort into, and it's not just appointing Jess. It's going to be appointing the volunteers around Jess to help us administrate that. And her primary focus is not going to be on the administration side of it. It's going to be on how do we develop that? How do we do those assessments with people and find if they really want to do something else? So I've spoken to him, he's battling with programming and VJ. What's your real passion? Oh, photographer. Okay, we've got to take some photos. So the answer is no, we don't make use of our best resources. We couldn't use our spaces any better. They're fantastically well used. We couldn't use our vans, given that we could volunteer drivers. Our vans are well used. There's many resources we use well, but our volunteers, there's a lot more exploring to do. Well spotted.
Well, I think our space is the issue.
Yeah.
Our space there, we could make better use of our space.
Yeah.
There's people in this room that have been involved in logistics. There's people in this room that have been involved of the management of item A through to going out the door, coming in and going out. And, there's an opportunity to do that, and it does require a lot of thought, and perhaps the people that are on the ground floor that have some experience in mapping those processes through could be a real asset to the organisation and make better use of the space we've got.
Absolutely.
That's the issue.
What we did this year is we opened up what we call forums. So, of course, the board has a subcommittee on finance. We have another on people. We have another on risk now. And we have more forums. Now, they're not particularly well attended, not necessarily the right people, but the point is we've had forums. So we've had more regular country coordinator meetings, and we're having forums where people can say, this is the Ipswich forum, please come to the Ipswich forum and let's talk about our challenges. Steve, We're not going to talk about the cake and the biscuits. You should have heard Steve, Steve on the radio talking about all the cakes and biscuits. But so the point of that forum is to talk about that. And there's interesting ones to talk about in the future. So the fundraising forum's already been worked on, and many others like that.
Any other questions?
Simple question. What's the difference between a satellite and a hub?
We're going to work that out. So if you take strong refurbishment centres, and I don't want to commit Medway to anything too early, but let's take a strong refurbishment centre like Medway, and saying, well, could Medway become, as an example, a hub? There's a building, there's volunteers, there's others that are already acting like hubs in some ways. But the question in our mind is, how do we duplicate that, like a Halstead or a Frinton, and many of those others. So if you take a small men's shed and they're saying, we're just going to clean chisels, so Steve doesn't clean them. Right, we're cleaning chisels now, John. We're not going to do anything else for us, and they're saying that's going to be a satellite centre. We're just going to do one little thing, and the hub's going to be able to say, well, send them over to us. You don't have to send the chisels up to Ipswich and drive 2 hours in the car and 2 hours back down. Just send them over to us. And at the next van load, we will send them all together. A little bit more coordination. They're going to have a volunteer for coordinating logistics and things like that. A little bit more work for the hubs to do. Take pressure off the main centres and clean up the thing a little bit more efficient, less fuel costs.
Any more? Paul.
Thanks, Keith. John, you'll be delighted. This one isn't for you, this question. So we talked about this earlier, Keith, and it's just really to flag it up again publicly and to, obviously we've seen the new strategic plan, fantastic, very on board with that. Significant uplift in funding is required, and so I'm just want to make sure that the trustees are going to consider all options for that funding, which includes potentially having discussions about other forms of accessing funding, including the National Lottery. And if you haven't had that debate, I think that's a debate that now needs to be had soon, so that you can decide whether or not that's an appropriate, and that and other potential fundings are suitable. Stewardship is an important thing, and there's a lot of debate in the Christian church about stewardship, as there is in many other religious organisations, and I think it's one that needs to be considered seriously now by the trustees, particularly in light of that strategic plan.
Absolutely. Yes, we were open to other streams of funding, absolutely. We're not going to reach that target by the traditional methods we've had of individual giving on church givings. We have to tap into other streams of funding, absolutely. Yes, the board has talked about National Lottery. Obviously, as a Christian organisation, we have an ethical issue about it, and therefore it's something we have to, we do raise on a fairly regular time frame, and certainly when we get gifts, we always ask, is this appropriate? So every time we get funding, we ask that question. So we're not averse to looking at alternative funding, but we obviously base our decisions, the board, on our Christian principles, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be the National Lottery or whatever in terms of gambling, but it's said in terms of reputational. Where did this coming from? Was it from fraud? Was it from ill-gotten gains, etc.? So yes, we believe, we understand that, and we're open to anything that will open us to, give us more funding within our ethical principles that we have. Anything else? David?
Would you consider buying land in order to get some more space?
You're looking at me and I'm looking at you. Well, the short answer is yes, because that's what Ipswich is. Because if you know the history of Ipswich, it was originally rented, and then we were offered Bill will tell you the full details about it, he's here somewhere. We'll tell you the details about it, but eventually we were given the opportunity to buy that, and we bought that. So yes, currently rugby is being rented from an organisation own it. We haven't gone into that yet, but again, we're not averse to that. It would depend on how much, where, what's the benefit of it. Is it just land for land's sake? We're not a land or property development company. We're a development company, a charity. I think the Charity Commission would look not particularly well on us just buying land if we were buying it just to invest, but if it was for a purpose to build a building or whatever, then yeah, but that requires funding. So therefore, yeah, it would be part of our thinking over what we do. And we certainly did do that thinking when we were looking at rugby or looking for a place. Did we buy somewhere or did we rent somewhere, et cetera, et cetera. So we have gone through what the business people would call make me buy proposals of what we do and how we do it. So it's always part of our thinking, yes, definitely.
And then,
at the moment, we got no opportunity to do that. So.
And the only reason why we're not looking at it immediately because we have outgrown the facility in Ipswich, and it's like our home, it's our love, you know. Thank you, Bill and Beryl, for the inheritance and others that you've given us there. But the only reason why we're looking at it now is because I think that there are things that we need to do to develop the organization first. So we take on our next big fundraising project or our next big operational project. We've got the money and the volunteers in place because everybody's working really hard at the moment. So yes, in time. Yeah, is that okay? Thanks.
Got other questions here?
I just was thinking, have you thought about going round to the different churches around Suffolk and promoting TWAM and trying to get more funding through doing that? Because I think that might be a really good idea, and also having leaflets that you give out at different churches, because I think a lot of people might not be aware that TWAM even exists, so I think that would be a really good idea.
We hear two, I'm glad you asked the question because it's going to touch on a key point. We hear two things about that. So we get two answers. We get, yes, we definitely know about TWAM. We've always known about TWAM. It's been there forever, right? And the other answer we get is, I wish we'd known. So we haven't done enough with regards to churches. And so we're resourcing up that element, and so we're wanting to talk to churches more regularly. We do have 160 speakers around the country, 60 speakers around the country that do go and do lots of talks at the Rotary, at the Round Table, at other organizations, at churches, and so they're doing a fantastic job for us already. So there's going to be the speakers. We've got Kath, one of our volunteers, looking at speakers alone, and she's going to be administering that a little bit better. And we've got Jess, our new volunteer coordinator, is going to be looking at reaching out and talking to churches about volunteering, donating, and supporting.
Okay, unless there's anything urgent, I think with time we'll call it a day there. Obviously, John and I and other board members are around if you want to grab us during lunch to discuss certain things and some of the aspects. There's a lot of detail in John's presentation, so thank you very much. Can we give John a round of applause, please, for that? Okay, you'll be hearing shortly again from John, but most of the next section is me. I'm moving into the legal part that we have to satisfy as a charity for the Charities Commission with the annual accounts and our annual general meeting. So we have members of the charity. You will know who you are. And I've just picked up the wrong thing. All members only members can vote for the things, and every member should have a voting card if you got it with you for when we come to some votes. But everyone's obviously entitled to listen in, etc. But only members, if you've got a card, can vote. We'll have a number of votes later on, and all those votes I'll be asking for somebody to propose, somebody to second, and then we'll take a vote for, against, and abstentions. And Brian, our secretary, will be minuting all this now for the legal document for our AGM. Okay. Okay, so that's the so the next thing is apologies for absence. I think Brian has got a number already. If there are any more, anyone else come with apologies from other people?
I've had 28 apologies in total, although some of those
will be watching on the screen. So it's not, it's a distance to come here. So they are in the meeting, but they're remote at the moment. But I've had 28 apologies. Any others? Anyone? Okay. Any more? Please see Brian afterwards. Thank you, Brian. So the next item is minutes of last AGM held on the 8th of June 2024 in Rugby. For members, you would have received with your notification the minutes on here. If your memory serves you right, can we take a vote now that that is an accurate representation of the meeting last year? Can I have a proposer, please? Paul White. Seconder? I'll second it. All four, please raise your voting cards. You got a number? $11. Any against? None. Any abstentions? None. Thank you very much. Next item is matters arising from the minutes. I couldn't find any matters arising that aren't covered in the agenda and the presentations today. So unless anyone's got anything to say, there's no matters arising. Okay. Chief Exec's report. Back to John.
My apologies that you have to hear me 3 times today in a row. I promise next year it'll not be as many. But it's just the 5-year plan. We get to the strategic plan and we have to talk about it a little bit more. So the CEO's report, as you've probably heard before, and this of course for the legal part of our organization, is just to say that our report is filled with joy. It's been a great humbling, the greatest humbling experience of my life is to see what Tools of the Mission does, who does it, and what we achieve. If you look at the board's current mandate was to stabilize the organization, build out relationships with the board, strengthen the organization, and develop a new strategy. That's what we've been busy with the last year. So that's why the board members have been frowning and I've been frowning. Please don't take it personally. There's been a lot to think through. And it's a testament to the team that have stood in their ground, trained me up so that I know what I have to do, and we're able to go from that point. The primary objective we set for last year is we're going to donate 18,000 toolkits within 1 year at 100% fulfillment. So I originally said about 40 toolkits a day. And that averages out a cost of about £41 per kit by the time you get it out. From everything that we spend, from the day that we collect the piece of tool to the day we deliver the toolkit, it's about average of about £41 a toolkit. So what I didn't get to grips with was the ambition of the team, and we easily hit 50 toolkits a day last year. So that's a tremendous effort from everybody. Yeah. Are you still there? Yeah, I'm still here. So there, that's just off on the television. All right, just to let Trev know. Within 1 year at 100% fulfillment. Now we knew we weren't going to get all our toolkits out within 1 year, but we also knew that we were going to strive for 100% fulfillment. So every time somebody paid for a toolkit, they would get a toolkit. So I'm just looking at that because I'm aware that so many people are there. So we did 18,500 toolkits to over 500 organizations in 7 countries. Over 2,000 unique causes have been affected with 95% fulfillment, and I know that 95% is a lot more. I was just being conservative with that. By 700 plus volunteers in the UK and the Africa. So you see a slight shift. We're going to talk a little bit more about Africa for going forward as an organization. We did 550 volunteers in the UK, but there's at least 150 in Africa that donate their time or their resources. And as we like to say to everybody, sort of our catchphrase at the moment from a marketing point, if you're going out and telling people, is that that 50 toolkits a day is a tremendous effort on our behalf. There's a lot more, you can go through that quickly. So the impact on the earth, that's an old stat at 280 tons. It's a lot more than that, I think. We're struggling to measure that one. You'll notice some difference in reporting. Somebody will say 20 containers, 21, 22 containers. We're trying to get better at that. So if you consider that a 40-foot container is 2.3, that's the difference there. There's a range of toolkits. So between the electric and manual sewing machines, you'll see that there's well over 3,000 there. The tools were delivered by type, and you're welcome to look through this or ask me questions more, and I'm just in the interest of time going to be moving this. But 500 projects, by far the greatest one is women's groups and widows. Young people's schools, dropouts, vulnerable people's schools, etc. And then orphans. So many groups, and our report this year this is linked to the strategy, was to say, well, this is the journey that we're on, and we start this journey with a tool, and as we go along there, one of the things we had to think about is if we're going to grow from this point forward, we cannot grow alone, and so we've had to reach out and build networks and partnerships, and we've cracked the ice and started doing that. The other thing we had to start thinking about this year was what we call sort of value chain analysis, from a business point of view, or at least, just balancing the supply along the line. So we're getting how many tools we've got, how many volunteers we've got in the refurbishment center, and that's what we've worked really hard at this year. So we were able to, the team were able to increase efficiencies in Rugby and in Ipswich, and grow the amount of containers we could stretch out. So we dropped our container turnover right down to 2 a month on average, but we've had to draw back at the moment and hold off some containers to next year because our fundraising has not kept up with the other parts of it. So you asked for the good news and the bad news, and that's one of them. If you look at what I'm suggesting is that TWAM is no longer a local charity. We're now a national charity. And if you want to ask more questions, Trev will gladly answer your questions during the break. So your support can change lives, and that's our next drive. Now, you're going to see a little bit more effort and impetus and discussion on that because we're 3 years behind in our fundraising, but I want you to know that we're not changing our heart. Because you're seeing that and you're already donating and giving, I want you to know that we're not changing our heart. We are staying with the heart of who TWAM is. But we're going to be a little bit more outgoing and a little bit more confident in what we have to offer the world as a place to give and get your feeling that money is well spent and it's leading towards sustainability. We did a brand refresh this year, and you might ask, what's the point of that? Well, the point is we're wanting to reflect who we are as a people, and it's no longer just an English charity, but it's an international charity. And so we've gone with a more Afro-centric look because we hope to improve our communications in Africa. So if you think about, we distributed 18,500 toolkits, so there's 500 organizations. We should talk to them a little bit more, and we're going to be doing that. And that our look and feel that we're wanting to propose to corporates and to others is more about that. We've new leaflets, we've expanded the tool cells, and the team's working very hard in that. Rugby's really pushing the boundaries there. Well done, Garth, and Tim and Alison have done a fantastic job. And also in Ipswich with Trev and Sheldon are starting to look at this afresh. And so we're talking more about eBay and Gumtree and all those modern things there. We're looking at partners. There's so many more we could put on there, like Paddy and Scott's and all the rest of them. But we're leaning into those partners. Now, you asked me during the break, what countries we work into. So we've had to slow down and stop sending to DR Congo. And it's always in our heart to say, that's a war-torn country, that's where they need the tools the most. But it's unsafe for the volunteers to cross the border into Uganda and fetch the tools, the current climate. And Mary, the country coordinator, has done a fantastic job there for us, has wisely advised that we need to stop, and we've stopped going into DR Congo. But like I've said, we brought England online. So we're sending to Uganda, Burundi, Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. There's some new discussions on the go. Nigeria, Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa, and so many others. I'm not going to be able to remember them all. But, and David Moat is saying he wants Rwanda to be first today. So he's going to push for Rwanda first. But the good news is that we're being invited into these countries from a place of the place of strength that we can offer. Kenya's highlighted because Paddy and Scott are willing to back us to go into Kenya. But we also had a look this year and saying, well, if you look at the graphs, everything's going up, but the staff count is staying the same. And that's where the risk and the investments had to come in. And we've had a look at the staff count and increase the staff count in strategic areas. Not sufficiently, but enough to stretch us this year so that our fundraising can catch up. So there's a couple more roles. You might not be able to read them there. Not that important, but the important one to know is James going into country development role, and he's going to be developing all these things I've spoken about today on the countryside. The other thing is supporting the refurbishment centres, and there's a challenge there because we were only able to point one of the two assistants into the service refurbishment centres, which was a big step for everybody to realise that we actually needed a full-time paid employee who was slightly younger than the volunteers in each centre with the heavy equipment. So there's a challenge there with regards to rugby. So that's, in a nutshell, the CEO report.
Thank you, John. So yes, a lot going on. Whenever the mention of DR Congo is mentioned, those of you who remember will remember Paul Seymour's story about when he and Mike were in Zambia and were in the northern part in the copper belt and had to get back to the other side. And rather than take the 8-hour drive around, they decided to cut across that little bit of DR Congo and got stopped with men with guns halfway across. I think Paul described it as the scariest point of his life ever. And he'd lived in Africa for a number of years. So yeah, it's a dangerous place to be in DR Congo. Next on the agenda is the chairperson's report. Now, I'm standing in for the chair, but I'm not the chair. Simon, obviously, is the chair. So Simon has written a report which I will read out now for you. Firstly, I would like to apologise for not being with you today. My employment responsibilities have, unfortunately, had to take precedence. I hope that your time together is as good as it normally is. Next, I would like to thank all of our volunteers and supporters for your ongoing committed support. John has been meeting with his counterparts from similar charities this year, such as Tools for Self-Reliance, WorkAid, and others, and they have all commented that they don't know how we achieve what we do. As a person of faith in a charity that proclaims its Christian heritage and ongoing identity, it would be easy to say, oh, it's the Lord. But I believe that the way God answers our prayers is by giving us so many people of all faiths and none that appreciate the need, enjoy the work, and feel at home in whatever part of the TWAM community that they find themselves. Thank you for being for the part that you play, your motivation, your skills, your time, your prayers, and your finances. In the annual report, the trustees have in particular highlighted 3 people that have moved on, or are about to. Lynn Walker, Paul Seymour, and Jan Brown have given extraordinarily to the life of TWAM. Within the area of logistics, country development, and finance respectively, they have developed the processes that TWAM have come to rely upon to manage significant parts of our activity. All 3 will be missed for their passion, for the cause, as much as their contribution, and we wish them well as they seek their next place in which to contribute. The staff team continue to excel at what they do, and all of us appreciate the lengths they go to ensure that we each can play our part. As John started to bring some changes to the organisation, We have felt some of these growing pains that new ideas always bring, and we are grateful to the staff for taking part in the conversations and working through the thinking needed to bring some of those new ideas to life. John has shared with you today some of the strategic thinking that he's been developing, and we look forward to this progressing further over the coming months and to see the implementation have a positive impact in TWAM's work. Finally, I would like to thank the board for their ongoing support. You will remember that we brought 2 new members onto the team last year, and we have benefited from the dynamic of being a larger group with broader experience. Not wanting to sound like a broken record, we are, however, still looking for a person to join the board. So we're still looking for people to join the board. In particular, someone based in Ipswich would be a good advantage, as would our ongoing search for someone with a professional financial background. TWAM doesn't just give tools. It gives hope, dignity, and a future to each person that receives something that we send. Thank you for playing your part in making a difference. Simon, thanks. So, as some of you will know, Simon is in Coventry today at Coventry Cathedral. His role as Chief Operating Officer, he's on a 3-line whip because a new bishop is being installed and he has to be there. We've obviously had this meeting booked for a year, and that came in recently. And at the board meeting where he told us, I did say to him, Simon, where's your priorities? To which he answered, I think my priority is keeping my job, thank you very much. So he would love to be here, you know that. He's been a part of TWAM for many years, but unfortunately duty calls him to another form of work today. But I know his thoughts are definitely with us today. I spoke to him yesterday. Okay, next on the agenda is a financial report, which I am going to give on behalf of the board. We've just got 2 slides here. Now, if you, as a member, you will have access to the full report and accounts, which are online. They were approved by the board a couple months ago, and they're available there for you to see, which gives the full detail behind this. But I'm just going to highlight, obviously, 2 slides, if you can see that behind you. I agree with John. I was going to look there, but it's actually too small to read, so I need to turn around here. So John said in his strategic plan that our aim is to get to £1 million this year. Last year, so remember, TWAM's financial year runs from November the 1st to October the 31st each year. So this is the year November the 1st, 2023 to the 31st of October 2024. Okay? Which is what we're looking at here. So the income for 2024 was just over £800,000. So we are approaching the £1 million level, but not there yet, as we should have been. And this is just a breakdown of our income streams that Paul was referring to earlier on. So 60%, 59.5, just under 60% is donations and legacies. So that's individual donations, that is church donations, that is legacies and grants that we've been given as well. 20%, the green, is freight income. As you know, we ask for a contribution to freight, which then gets applied to the containers when they're sent out. And 20% of our income is freight income, and 19.3% is sale of tools. Now that portion is increasing. If you saw the detail on the slide where John said for our 5-year plan to increase our total income to 2.3 million in 5 years, those 4 segments, well, if you take donations and legacies as 2, so donations, legacies, sales and freight, we want to try and get them into balance of about 25% each. We've obviously got a small percentage of investment that we've made from our investments because we've got a fair amount of cash we've put into investment funds, and they have increased in value, but it's not an income generation stream. It's just a good stewardship of our money to have it in a fund that increases in value rather than sitting in a bank doing nothing. But we want to try and balance those 4 over the next 5 years to be 25% each. So that 60% is in 2 effectively over the years. Our expenditure, which was 790,000. So if you look at the income was 800,000. Expenditure was 790,000, so £10,000 a surplus we made last year. Again, broken down, and I'll just highlight the big ones. So the big one, obviously, 36.8 staff costs, 18% freight, 17% building running costs, and 15% other admin, and the rest make up a smaller amount. So that's where most of our money goes, primarily in staff, building, freight, and general overrunning admin. So that's our overall financial position. As I said, if you've been a member, you'll have access to the full report and accounts. It's on the website. And we now need to move to a set of voting. But before we do, I just want to ask, before we actually go to start voting, are there any questions for John on his report, me for the financial, and unfortunately we can't ask Simon, but I'll answer on his behalf as chair. Any questions before we move to voting? Big silence is no then. Thank you. So now the voting bit starts. So the first bit is adoption of the annual report. So as I said, the report has been approved by the board. It's been agreed by our auditors. We have a full audit of our accounts. If I understand and get this right, please correct me if I get this wrong, Brian, but we don't need to get our accounts audited. We're not quite big enough. £1 million is the point where we need to, but we had to have an audit done when we registered with VAT, and we decided as we were growing, it was a good idea to keep it going for the years ahead. So we have a full audit done every year. That was agreed by our accountants, agreed by the auditors, and now has to be adopted by the members. So can I have someone to propose? Yes, that's right. Funds. Yes, you're right. So if we're a full audit is very good. So obviously, people who want to give money to us, we're going for funding for grant giving bodies or corporates. They always want to see your audited accounts, please. So that's a good position for us to be in. Can I have someone to propose the accounts, please? Brian, someone to second? Trevor, Cox. Can all those in favour please vote with your card? 11 for. Any against? None. Any abstentions? None. Thank you very much, folks. Next on the list is appointment of our auditors. The board are proposing that we reappoint NSERS as our auditors for this coming year. They've done a good job for us over the years, so we'll do that. So I will propose that, please, Brian. Who can second that, please? Dave. Those for, please. 11. Any against? None. Any abstentions? None. Thank you. Next is to reappoint trustees. So trustees are reappointed on a 3-year basis. This year it's Simon and myself up for re-election. We both put ourselves forward again for re-election. The rest of the board would be pleased to know. So can I have someone to propose Simon for re-election, please? Dave? Someone to second? Margaret? Hillary, sorry. Hillary. Wrong one. Hillary. Hillary. Those again? Those for? 11. Those against? None. Abstentions? None. Sorry? Oh, okay. All right, okay. Someone to propose me, please? Oh, thank you, Paul. That was rather grudging. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll remember that. Seconded, please. John. So Paul White and John Hilton. Thank you, John. I've seen you a moment there. Those for? You're right. You're right. It was automatic. Against? Abstention, me, obviously. So 10 for. Thank you. Okay, so legally we have the trustees have to be re-elected by the members. However, the election of officers doesn't need to be done by the members, do and have done over many years as a courtesy to the membership. So the officers being chair, Simon, Brian as secretary, and a treasurer, which is vacant. So we'll come to that in a second. So I will propose Simon as chair. Anyone second that? And Wendy Hilton. Those four? Everyone? Those against? None. Abstentions? None. Thank you. Anyone to propose Brian as secretary? Dave, do you want to second it, Bill? Bill can second it. Thank you. For those four? Those against? Everyone? Those against? None. Abstentions? None. Thank you. And the final thing is to talk about the treasurer. As Simon said in his report, we will be looking for a treasurer, and we'd like a treasurer to join the board. So if you know of anyone, please, then please do get in touch with us, or if you are an accountant or have a financial background, we'd love to hear from you. So please approach the board. Obviously, it has been said before that the board, because it's a Christian organisation, the board is anyone who joins the board and the chief exec has to be a person with a practicing Christian faith. If you are one of those people, then please approach us and talk to us about it. We'd love to hear from you. But obviously, the flip side of that, as we've always said, is that we have people here who are of all faiths, no faith. It's just those particular strategic roles are kept for people who could follow the ethos that we have as a Christian organisation. So it's still vacant, and we're still looking. We've tried various avenues, so we'll keep looking. So thank you for that. And the next meeting is Saturday the 6th of June 2026. Venue, we will decide and communicate that at due course. So thank you, everybody. That brings us to the end of our meeting, end of the AGM. Thank you. And brings us to the end of our time with us. And I am pleased to say it's 5 to 1. We've done it in 5 minutes. We're 5 minutes to spare. No, I won't say it. So thank you very much. I hope it's been an enjoyable morning for you. I hope you've learnt a lot of what's going on, more, understanding the breadth of the organisation. I hope and motivate to do the work that we do. It is a great work. It does change lives. It does make a difference. Sitting in an office. What's going on with it? Is the battery going? It's fading out. Sitting in an office in Ipswich, or driving a van around the M25, or sitting in a van on the M25, probably more accurately, or refurbishing a tool in Rugby, you might not think it does much, but believe me, it does. And as we've seen from what John has shared, and from a number of people who visited our projects around Africa, it makes a huge difference. Lives are changed, people have a living, people have dignity. So thank you from me and from the board and from the staff for everything you do. Thank you for everything that you continue to do, and we look forward to another successful year. So before we have lunch, let me close with a word of prayer. Let's pray. Our Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for, we started this session by praising your name and worshipping you and glorifying you for what you have done through our Lord Jesus Christ. And we thank you for the work that we do with TWAM. We thank you for everyone in this room. Thank you for all those that are online watching. Thank you for all those people who are involved day to day in many different ways, in many facets of this organization, to bring hope and to bring dignity to people. Thank you for the opportunity we have to serve you in this way. Thank you for the opportunity we have to serve each other in this way as a community of people and to serve the community that we have through our recipients. Thank you for your gracious watching over us during this past year. Thank you for the staff and the safety that we've had. Thank you for the funds that have been provided. Thank you for the enthusiasm and the hours that have been put in. And we pray, Lord, that as we look to the future with the strategy we've been talking about today, that you would indeed bless it, that you would guide us and help us as John in his role as Chief Executive. Thank you for bringing him to us, and that you would bless us as a board and as an organization and as volunteers and as staff, that we would see TWAM doing even more and partnering even more and bringing much more hope and to people. Thank you now for this time we've had. Thank you for the food that's provided. Bless it to us, we pray, and our discussions and our conversations over lunch. May they be peppered with grace and with love to each other and to what we do as an organization. Thank you, Lord. Bless this time to us, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, everybody. Lunch is served, and see you again in a year's time. Well, probably see you before. Thank you.